Thoughts on the 533 Flipswitch frame? Thank you very much for a $2 Super Chat, Bulldog FPV. The Flipswitch. Community-led freestyle design. Well, that's freestyle, all right. Nope, I don't know if you guys heard. Freestyle's dead. Cinematic and Cinewhoops are all that matter anymore. So, it doesn't really matter. The 533 Flipswitch. Now, I remember the light switch. I see. So, here we've got the light switch is their racing frame. And they had the footy, which was, I believe, a hybrid racing / freestyle frame. So the Flipswitch is Evan Turner's pure freestyle frame. And we have to start by saying Evan Turner, like and Armando Gallegos, I think is his last name. Those guys are no slouches when it comes to designing frames. So like, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, ooh, I like this. Ooh, I don't like that. But like, come on. It's like, it's good, right? But that doesn't mean we can't nitpick it. And I totally will. Ooh, that's a great photo. Or is that a render? That's a render. So we have soft mounting for the 03. A lot of people are going to care about that. Fits the original DJI Air unit. Not that anyone still flies it, but okay. Plenty of room back there. It is a slam deck design. Slam deck designs like this they are very challenging to build if you don't have at least a medium level of experience building. Like, just the extra 5 millimeters you might get, or 10 millimeters from longer standoffs, give you so much more flexibility to just stuff stuff in there and not have to think a lot about like how big your wires are or where your receiver goes, all kinds of things like that. Even just looking at this photo, I'm like, where would the receiver go? Where's the receiver in this build? It's not in the back. There's nowhere to put it. The receiver is behind the camera. And that means most likely that your antenna is up on the side or up on the front, which you may not like. So it's going to lock you in certain ways. A lot of people will not like this being this slammed. Yeah, Plenty.
You may have answered this already, but like, what are we achieving with the split deck?
Okay, so let's talk about the split deck. So then we got a split deck. And the reason that we need the split deck, so let's back out from the beginning to the end, or the end to the beginning. The reason we need the split deck is because the camera requires a certain amount of height. I've seen when slam deck designs first started to become a thing, designs that were slammed all the way from the front to the back. And the problem is that you don't have any room to up tilt the camera. Okay? The camera just hits the bottom plate or hits the top plate. So the split deck design is starting from the premise that you want to make the deck as slammed as possible, but you have to give the camera enough room to tilt back. And so then what you see people do, I think this is how the design goes. Obviously, Evan could, okay, that's going to be the best picture. Evan can speak for himself and I'm sure he has talked about the design, but you go, okay, this is the minimum height that I need to give my camera enough room. And by the way, not just the 03, but multiple cameras, enough room to tilt back and front. And then I'm going to have this here for the GoPro. So this is dictated by the desire to carry a HD camera. And also, like, it's just convenient to have this go back to the first set of standoffs. But then we slam the frame. And the idea there is that it puts the battery closer to the center of mass. So now we have reduced the center of mass, the distribution of the mass by a small amount. And that should make it snappier to rotate. The big question, of course, is there any noticeable difference between like that extra like 5 millimeters or 2 millimeters or whatever of height, having the battery that close to the center of mass? I think it's debatable whether there's a difference. You increase the durability a little bit because when you have an impact, there is less torque on these vertical braces excuse me, being shorter, there's less torque on them. You will never have your battery slide forward and slam your GoPro and break the back screen because the battery can't slide forward because you got the split deck. But Blunty, I think that's why split decks became a thing. People wanted to slam the top deck as low as possible, but realized they had to give the camera some breathing room, and that's what we ended up with. I also think that's the motivation for this split here. Like, so this, we actually have a split bottom plate and a split top plate. But a lot of frames solve this problem with this split bottom plate and a solid top plate, and they still have a little bit more room in the front than the back.
Presumably, is that because they didn't want to put it that high up in the front, so you like give some on the bottom and some on the top? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's advantages to a split bottom plate in terms of resonance characteristics.
Oh.
And
okay.
yeah, so I think that it is currently commonly accepted wisdom, driven mostly by Chris Rosser. So, you have to decide whether that's good enough for you, because no one in the FPV world really is able to duplicate his results. They just don't have the skills or the tools. But I think there's a belief that split decks tends to have better resonance characteristics than single piece. Like, the worst resonance characteristics is a single piece of milled carbon. And the next best would be like 4 separate arms with a single bottom plate and like an X plate. And then it's almost like the more pieces you make the bottom plate out of, the better the resonance characteristics get. Ostensibly because like the joints in between the pieces like absorb some of the noise or something like that. I don't know.
But and then you're just doing trade-offs, because then you have possibly weakness in the design, like on certain angles that you're getting hit or whatever, right? Because then the question is, why isn't everything split deck? Is it just harder to build? Is it harder to design?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe some people just don't cotton to that wisdom. Split decks are more complicated to build just because you have more pieces. I think they can be stronger because you're able to orient the pieces relative to the carbon plate so that like you optimize the direction of the weave, if that's a thing for the type of carbon you're using. Whereas when you cut a single piece out of the carbon fiber plate, some of the strands will not be going in the optimal direction. So I don't think it's a given that a split deck design is going to be weaker. And like some of the most durable designs are split decks. Well, a lot of designs nowadays are split decks. So to me, like, I wouldn't, like, obviously I love the QAVS. That's the frame I worked with Ryan Harrell and Santiago Espanzola, I think. Ryan and Santiago worked with them to sort of help shape it. I full credit to Ryan and Santiago. They basically designed a frame, and then I was like, I like that frame. Can I change like 4 things about it and put my name on it? And they were like, sure. And that's, so when I say I like worked with them, let's not overstate my contribution. But this frame wouldn't like be my first pick as a freestyle frame. It's just like a little fiddly for me, and I'm not sure the benefits are there. I would be cussing the whole time I built it because of how slammed this is. I'd be like, the spacers I have on my flight controller are just a little too tall, and my flight controller's hitting the top deck, and I have to go find shorter spacers. And I just like a little more flexibility in my build, and this really locks you down. But I'm sure it's an excellent frame. They make good stuff. What does it cost? $75? It's a very reasonable price. It looks like a very high quality frame for $75. Metal front end, excellent. Excuse me. If it appeals to you, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't get it. But know that you're going to really have to be very precise in the build because of how slammed it is.